I spent 4 years saving every single dollar I earned, working overtime, skipping vacations, eating cheap meals just to put money aside. And when I finally bought my 2018 Mustang GT, I paid for it in cash. No loans, no help from anyone. That car was more than transportation. It was proof that I could build something on my own. But I never imagined that same car would nearly destroy my life and that my own family would be the ones trying to put me behind bars. Before I get into what happened, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below with your city or country. And if you have ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Because what I am about to tell you changed everything I believed about family trust and what it really means to stand alone. My name is Columbus, and I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood just outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We had a decent house, 2 cars in the driveway, and from the outside we looked like any other American family. But inside those walls, there was always an invisible line that separated me from my older brother Derek. Derek was 4 years older than me, and from the day I was born, he was the golden child. My father Harold had been a lawyer before he retired, and he always saw Derek as his successor. My mother Linda treated Derek like he could do no wrong. When Derek wanted to go to college, my parents paid for everything: his tuition, his apartment, his car, even his spending money. They never asked him to work a single day during those 4 years. When it was my turn, things were different. My father sat me down and told me that money was tight, that I would need to figure things out on my own. I was 16 years old and I started working at a hardware store after school. I did not complain. I did not argue. I just accepted it and kept moving forward. Looking back, maybe I should have questioned why the rules were so different for me. But I was young, and I believed that working hard would eventually pay off. After high school, I went to trade school instead of college. I became a licensed electrician, and I was proud of that. I worked long hours, took night shifts, and saved every penny I could. 4 years of sacrifice, 4 years of discipline, and finally, I had enough to buy my dream car. A black Mustang GT 2018 model with a manual transmission and leather seats. I paid $32,000 in cash. No financing, no debt. Just pure hard work turned into something real. I remember driving that car home for the first time, the engine rumbling beneath me, the smell of new leather, the way the steering wheel felt in my hands. I drove straight to my parents' house to show them. My mother smiled politely, but I could tell she was not impressed. My father barely looked up from his newspaper. Derek was not there that day, which was probably for the best. But I did not let their reaction bother me. That car was mine, and nobody could take that away from me. Or so I thought. It was a Saturday evening in late October when everything started to unravel. I had driven over to my parents' house for dinner, something I did almost every week. Derek was there too, which was unusual. He had been distant lately, always making excuses to avoid family gatherings. But that night, he showed up looking nervous. His eyes kept darting toward the window, and he could barely sit still during the meal. My mother spent most of dinner talking about how well Derek was doing. She said he was about to start his own company, that he had big investors lined up, that he was going to make the family proud. Derek just nodded along, but something about his expression did not match her words. He looked tired, worn down, like a man carrying a weight he could not put down. After dinner, Derek came up to me in the kitchen. He said he had left his wallet in my car by accident, asked if he could borrow my keys to grab it. I did not think anything of it. I handed him the keys and went back to helping my mother with the dishes. 15 minutes passed before he came back inside. I noticed he was sweating even though it was cold outside, but I brushed it off. Maybe he had made a phone call or something. I took my keys back and forgot about the whole thing. The next morning, I woke up early for a job site visit. I walked out to the parking lot of my apartment building, and my heart stopped. The spot where I always parked my Mustang was empty. just bare concrete staring back at me. I stood there for a full minute, convinced I was looking at the wrong spot. But there was no mistake. My car was gone. I called the police immediately. They arrived within 20 minutes and took my statement. They asked about spare keys, about anyone who might have access to the car. That is when I remembered Derek holding my keys the night before. A cold feeling spread through my chest, but I pushed it away. There was no way my own brother would steal from me. Right, I tried calling Derek. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. I called my parents, and my mother picked up on the third ring. When I told her my car was missing, she sounded surprised but calm. She said Derek had left early that morning for a business trip and would not be back for a few days. She told me not to worry, that the police would find my car, that everything would be fine. But nothing was fine. And deep down, I already knew that everything was about to get much worse. 3 days after my car disappeared, I got a call from Detective Sandra Price. She asked me to come down to the station because they had found my vehicle. For a brief moment I felt relief. Maybe this nightmare was over. Maybe I would get my car back and move on with my life. But when I arrived at the station, Detective Price led me into a small conference room and showed me photographs that made my stomach turn. My beautiful Mustang had been reduced to a skeleton. The engine was gone, the seats were gone, the wheels were gone. All that remained was the stripped frame sitting in a muddy field at some junkyard 50 miles outside the city. Detective Price explained that the car had been sold for parts at a salvage yard. The owner of the yard had cooperated with the investigation and provided security camera footage. She turned her laptop toward me and pressed play. The video was grainy, but clear enough. I watched a man drive my Mustang through the gates of the salvage yard, negotiate with the owner, and walk away with a stack of cash. That man was Derek. I could not speak. I could not breathe. My own brother had stolen my car and sold it piece by piece for money. Detective Price asked me if I knew the man in the video. I told her the truth. I told her it was my brother. Over the next few hours, the full picture emerged. Derek was not starting a company. He had not worked in 6 months. Instead, he had developed a serious gambling addiction that had spiraled out of control. He owed money to dangerous people, over $40,000 in debt. He had sold my car to pay off part of what he owed, hoping he could somehow fix everything before anyone found out. I drove to my parents' house that same night. I needed answers. I needed to look Derek in the eye and hear him explain why he had done this to me. When I arrived, Derek was sitting in the living room with my parents as if they had been expecting me. His eyes were red and swollen. He had been crying. Before I could say a word, Derek started apologizing. He said he was sorry, that he had made terrible mistakes, that people were threatening to hurt him if he did not pay. He begged me to understand, to forgive him, to give him another chance. I turned to my parents, expecting them to be as outraged as I was. Instead, my father stood up and told me that I needed to drop the charges against Derek. He said that a criminal record would ruin Derek's life, that no one would hire him, that he would never recover. My mother started crying, asking me why I was being so selfish, why I could not just let this go for the sake of family. I could not believe what I was hearing. 4 years of my life went into buying that car. I had sacrificed so much, worked so hard, and my brother had stolen it all in one night. And now my parents were asking me to pretend it never happened. I told them no. I told them that Derek needed to face the consequences of his actions. I said that I loved my brother, but I would not be a victim to protect him. My father's face turned red with anger. He called me selfish, ungrateful, said I had always been jealous of Derek, and this was my way of getting revenge. The accusation hit me like a punch to the chest. I left that house without looking back. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, Detective Price called me again. She asked me to come to the station for additional questioning. When I arrived, her tone had changed. She was colder, more formal. She led me to an interrogation room and placed a folder on the table between us. Inside the folder was a photograph from an ATM camera. It showed someone wearing a dark hoodie withdrawing $20,000 in cash on the same day my car disappeared. Detective Price said the withdrawal was made from an account linked to my insurance claim. She said they had a witness who placed me at the salvage yard that day. She said I was now the primary suspect in an insurance fraud scheme. I felt the room spinning around me. I told her I had never made that withdrawal, that I had never been to that salvage yard, that someone was setting me up. She looked at me with skeptical eyes and told me I should probably get a lawyer. When I got home that night, my mind was racing. I kept thinking about that hoodie in the ATM photo. It looked like one I owned, a black zip-up with a small tear near the right sleeve. But I had not worn that hoodie in months. And then I remembered something that made my blood run cold. The week before, my parents had asked if they could visit my apartment while I was at work. They said they wanted to clean up a little, help me out since I had been working so much. I had given them a spare key and thought nothing of it. 2 days later, police officers arrived at my apartment with a search warrant. They found $5,000 in cash hidden inside my bedroom closet, stuffed behind some old clothes. I had never seen that money before in my life, but it did not matter what I said. I was arrested and charged with insurance fraud, facing up to 10 years in prison. My friend Marcus posted bail for me, $10,000 from his own savings. He was the only person who believed me when I said I was innocent. Everyone else had already made up their minds. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks after my arrest. I hired a defense attorney named William Ford, an old friend of Marcus who specialized in criminal defense. He was honest with me from the start. He said the evidence against me was strong, that the prosecution had video footage, a witness, and physical evidence found in my own apartment. He said we needed something concrete to prove my innocence, or I was going to prison. The night before the hearing, I could not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past few months in my head. And then something clicked. On the day my car was stolen, I had been working a night shift at a construction site. We were building a new hospital wing on the north side of the city. The site had electronic time clocks that required fingerprint verification. Every entry and exit was logged in the system. I called my site manager first thing in the morning and explained the situation. He pulled my records and emailed them to my attorney within the hour. The log showed that I had clocked in at 6 p.m. on the day of the theft and clocked out at 6 a.m. the following morning. There was no possible way I could have been at a salvage yard 50 miles away while my fingerprints were being scanned every few hours at a construction site. William Ford presented this evidence at the hearing, and I watched the prosecutor's confidence begin to crack. But we were not done yet. Ford requested that the court order a detailed analysis of the ATM footage. A video expert examined the recording frame by frame and made a crucial discovery. The person in the video was approximately 3 inches taller than me. I stand 5 feet 9 inches. Derek is 6 feet even. Ford also pointed out that the hoodie in the video had a visible tear on the right sleeve. I did not own any hoodie with that kind of damage. But when police searched Derek's apartment later that week, they found a black zip-up hoodie with a tear in exactly the same location. They also found text messages on Derek's phone showing conversations with the salvage yard owner negotiating the price for my stolen car. Derek was arrested at the courthouse during my next hearing. He broke down crying as they put handcuffs on him, begging our parents to help him. But there was nothing they could do. The evidence was overwhelming. And the investigation did not stop there. Detective Price started looking into the witness who had claimed to see me at the salvage yard. It turned out the man was a recovering alcoholic with a history of petty crimes. When detectives pressed him harder, he admitted that my father Harold had paid him $500 to provide false testimony. My father, a retired lawyer, had used his knowledge of the legal system to manufacture evidence against his own son. The final piece fell into place when investigators reviewed the security camera footage from my apartment building. The hallway camera showed my mother, Linda, entering my apartment with a large shoulder bag and leaving 30 minutes later with the bag noticeably lighter. She had planted the cash that police later found in my closet. The truth was finally out. My parents had not just failed to protect me, they had actively tried to destroy me to save Derek. They had planted evidence, paid for false witnesses, and manipulated the justice system. And all of it was done to protect their golden child from facing the consequences of his own actions. At the final hearing, all charges against me were dropped. Derek pleaded guilty to grand theft, auto, and fraud. He was sentenced to 4 years in state prison. My father Harold was convicted of obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and conspiracy. He received 2 years. My mother Linda was convicted of obstruction of justice and evidence tampering. She received 18 months. I sat in that courtroom and watched my entire family being led away in handcuffs. I had won. Justice had been served. But I did not feel victorious. I felt empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left only a hollow shell. The months after the trial were the hardest of my life. I had my freedom, but I had lost my family. Every night I would lie awake asking myself questions that had no answers. Why did they choose Derek over me? Was I ever really loved? What did I do wrong to deserve this? Marcus stayed by my side through all of it. He showed up at my apartment every weekend, dragging me out for coffee or a walk in the park. He refused to let me disappear into my own grief. He kept telling me that what happened was not my fault, that I deserved better, that someday things would make sense. I started seeing a therapist twice a week. At first I thought it was pointless. What could talking do to fix something this broken? But slowly, session by session, I began to understand my own feelings. I learned that betrayal by family cuts deeper than any other wound because we expect unconditional love from the people who raised us. When that expectation is shattered, it takes something fundamental from our sense of self. 6 months after the trial, the insurance company finally settled my claim. They paid me the full value of my stolen car plus additional compensation for the damages I had suffered. I used that money to put a down payment on a small house in a quiet neighborhood about 30 miles from where I grew up. I needed distance. I needed a fresh start. I threw myself into my work, taking on bigger projects and building a reputation as one of the best electricians in the region. I made new friends, real friends, who had no connection to my past. I learned to cook, started running every morning, adopted a dog named Buster, who became my constant companion. Piece by piece, I rebuilt my life from the ground up. About a year after moving into my new house, I reconnected with a woman named Sophie. We had worked together briefly at a job site years earlier, but had lost touch. We ran into each other at a hardware store, and something just clicked. She knew about my past, about the trial, about everything, and she did not judge me for any of it. She saw me for who I was, not for what my family had done. We started dating, and for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about the future. Sophie showed me that love does not have to come with conditions or expectations. It can simply exist pure and steady, asking nothing in return. 2 years after the trial, my mother was released early for good behavior. She wrote me a letter asking if we could meet. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore her completely, to pretend she did not exist. But another part of me knew that holding on to anger would only poison my own happiness. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my old neighborhood. She looked older, thinner, like the past 2 years had aged her by a decade. She cried through most of our conversation, apologizing over and over for what she had done. She said she had been wrong, to always favor Derek, wrong, to try to protect him at my expense, wrong about everything. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I told her that I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because I deserved to be free from the weight of resentment. I told her that forgiveness does not mean forgetting, and it does not mean we can go back to how things were. Some broken things cannot be fixed. They can only be accepted. We finished our coffee in silence, and then I stood up to leave. She asked if we could see each other again. I told her I did not know. I told her I needed time. And then I walked out of that coffee shop, got into my car, and drove home to the life I had built without her. Looking back on everything that happened, I have learned some hard truths about family and loyalty. Blood does not guarantee love. Growing up in the same house does not mean you share the same values. The people who are supposed to protect you can sometimes be the ones who hurt you the most. But I have also learned that betrayal does not have to define you. You can choose to let it break you, or you can choose to let it teach you. I chose to learn. I learned to trust my own strength. I learned to value the people who show up for me, not the people who are obligated to by birth. I learned that home is not where you came from. It is where you are accepted for exactly who you are. These days I spend my evenings on the porch of my little house watching the sun go down while Buster sleeps at my feet. Sophie is usually inside making dinner, and the smell of whatever she is cooking drifts through the screen door. It is a simple life, but it is mine. I built it with my own 2 hands, just like I built everything else worth having. Sometimes I think about Derek sitting in his cell, and I wonder if he has learned anything. Sometimes I think about my father and whether he regrets the choices he made. But mostly, I try not to think about them at all. They made their decisions, and they are living with the consequences. That is not my burden to carry anymore. If you are watching this, and you have been betrayed by someone you trusted, I want you to know that you are not alone. The pain is real, and it is valid, and it is okay to grieve what you have lost. But do not let that grief become your whole story. You are more than the worst thing that ever happened to you. You have the power to write a new chapter, to find new people who will love you the right way, to build a life that makes you proud. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most end up teaching you the greatest lessons. They teach you what you will not accept, what you will not become, and what you are truly capable of surviving. So if this story resonated with you, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been betrayed by someone in your own family? How did you find the strength to move forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this video helped you in any way, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more stories like this one. And share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you peace, I wish you healing, and most of all, I wish you the courage to keep moving forward no matter what life throws your way. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.